Welcome to the Taking a Breath podcast with Parker Mays.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Taking a Breath podcast. I'm Parker, and today I'm excited because I am bringing on a personal mentor, someone who I actually had an internship with for all of 2020, just over a year. And so Carolyn Timmons is joining me today to talk about that experience. Carolyn graduated from the University of Dayton in 2015 with a degree in business and communication management. In 2017, she joined RELX Group, an information and analytics company where we met, and she currently works as tech lead for the RELX customer support team. She's also in the middle of completing her MBA program through UD. And in her free time, she volunteers for the National Alliance on Mental Illness and Grant Us Hope, which promotes suicide prevention in schools. So super excited to get into all of this today. Carolyn, thanks so much for the time. I'm excited to have you on and would love for you to tell us a little bit more about you.
Happy to be talking with you, Parker. I joined RELX Group when I knew that I wanted to be in a corporate environment. I wanted to work in technology, but I didn't ever see myself as being, in Dexter's laboratory working behind a computer. So our team and what we created is the perfect mesh for me, in that we take technology and put it into user-friendly language. We're all always trying to keep up. Everything's always changing, whether it's on our phones or our PCs or it's an application that we log into. Everything's always changing. And so it's been a joy to find a career out of having to keep up for myself and then to help others keep up along with us. So I would say I don't know exactly how I got so lucky to find a position that would bridge all the things that I'm interested in doing, which is continually learning and growing, being in front of executive presence and people that you really want to impress and that challenge you to impress and to learn and grow. And then also be in a really exciting industry where technology is changing on the daily.
I love it. That's super exciting. And it's cool to see kind of the journey. So, getting to meet you a year ago where you are now, learn from you so much on a weekly basis. But one of the things that I love that you touched on there is in your role, this balance between actually working with people and working with the technology, right? Like that I remember being fascinating because I love, as you do, the working with people, that direct connection and the contact, but then also in this ever evolving, ever changing world, it kind of combines those two things, which I'm excited to get into a little bit today because there's so much there. I'm curious, when you first started at RELX and you were kind of, not right out of college, but just a couple of years out of college, and you were first there, did you have any doubts or concerns about working with people who were potentially, more experienced than you were at the time?
Absolutely. I think that I've always been a bit of a talker. I'm always a bit of a finesser, but I think that some people just have that gift, right? Like I always loved talking to adults. I grew up wanting to talk to adults and being a part of the greater conversations. And so I knew I could rise to the challenge, but when you step into a room and you know that every single person there has 5, 7, 15 years of experience on you and you're meant to be the expert, there's no one can deny that in and of themselves. You have to own it. And so that was one of the greatest pieces of advice that I got from my first boss at RELX. And he said, if you don't know, own that in the moment, but be the person who comes back with the answer. And I have lived to that every day since I heard that piece of advice. It is okay to not know. Those people with the experience admit to not knowing things all the time. That's how you learn. So you don't have to stand there and be subject matter expert to the minutia of detail, but you have to be there with confidence in getting them the answers that they want.
That's fascinating. And I love the being the youngest or being, because I can really relate to that. Like being the youngest in the room, so many of the listeners can relate to that as well, of, either the least experienced or, people have so much more experience than me, and rising to the challenge. I think that really speaks to like where I want to be, and definitely was in every single situation when I was there, is like I'm always going to be the youngest or the least experienced, but that's where there's the most opportunity for growth. And that's what you really took advantage of, is just so many opportunities to learn and grow and make connections with people in those spaces. And so having those perspective shifts for me has been really impactful, just realizing, wow, like I have so much to learn from these people who are 10, 20 years ahead. And again, it's a reason why I started this, just being able to learn and chat with people and grow through conversation.
So the flip side of it is that they have a lot to learn from us, and anyone who's been in their career for a long time gets a little less excited, a little more, well, I'll just figure it out for myself. So when we are the young and hungry ones in the workforce, when we own, I don't know, but I'm going to get you that answer, we truly do. We go and investigate, we get the answer, or we get solutions and opportunities. We present them to them and they say, thank you so much for the follow-up. Thank you for looking into this, because they didn't want to do it. Or they're used to people saying, I'll get right back to you, and then not. But we're young and hungry for information and to be helpful. And so we deliver on that. And I think that I know I've gotten that feedback for myself being younger in the role. I got that feedback when you were on our team. There's a big appreciation for that energy.
Do you feel like that's the best way to turn a potential one-time interaction or one-time meeting with someone into an actually developed relationship? Is there other tips you have around like how to develop relationships with these people who are, potentially I met them one time and I want to really like dive in deeper with them?
There is never a reason that any conversation or interaction could only be a one-time interaction. If you build trust off that first interaction, even if it's a minutia of a scenario where someone asked you a question and you either answered it or followed up, you built that trust. So you just use that as leverage. So when I would meet people, I got to do a bunch of traveling to meet these executives, to introduce them to the services that we wanted to provide as a team. I always followed up. Add them on LinkedIn, send them an email. It's great to meet you. I'm so glad that we were able to discuss how Zoom was working for you. Always take that seed and water it and water it and water it, and it will grow. And I've had those. I think we realize this too as we grow up, whether it's in professional or personal, that 6 degrees of separation piece, where people come back into your life or you're not that far removed. So even if I might have been traveling to our Raleigh office and thought, I'm not going to be back there or work with that person again. Well, what do you know? You get invited to a meeting or you're on an email chain and that person is there. So if you had reminded them and sent that email right after you met them, and then you see their name again, yet another opportunity to water the seed of saying, oh, I just saw you were on this email with me. It was so great when we got to meet last year and we were able to discuss Zoom. So I always think that being young and energetic plays to our favor in that networking and building relationships.
Yeah, 100%. And even I think like for students, we see that too, right? Like the one-off, like I had a class with this person or something. And then,
Yes.
2 years later, I come around and I'm joining a club and they're, the president of the club or something. Like there's just these cool connections that, if we invest our time and I mean, at the core of it, it just comes down to like treating those people as if, they're the most important person in your life, because there's so much value in the people that you spend time with. So I love that. That's 100% true.
Yes. And some of the realness that comes out of just sending someone a note or following up or adding them on LinkedIn, the following people's journey becomes something that, again, you might in school. Yes. Great example. You have classes or you come in and out of seeing people throughout the years there, but then in your career, my previous boss got me my job with my new boss, right?
Yeah.
And what if someday my old boss has a job? Like there's just this 6 degrees of separation, and you shouldn't deny it. And you should be excited anytime you meet someone, whether or not they can offer anything to you in that moment. Be excited for all the potential that you have across the rest of your life and your career.
For people who are young, like every opportunity is an opportunity. Like there is no like, oh, I don't need help right now. We all are going to need, there's so many years ahead of us, right? Like, so I think especially now that resonates. So speaking of just young people in general, I know that you've had the chance to manage a couple of interns, including myself. Do you have anything specific that you look for in potential interns? So this is like, as a hiring manager, I'm just curious, what are you and other people looking for in terms of young talent right now, especially?
All right, so I'll talk about you, since your audience is familiar with all that you have to offer. So when we interviewed, so it's just been just over a year now when I met you, we interviewed over video because I was in the Dayton office and you were in Raleigh. So we interviewed over video, and you brought energy to a video interview that you would want in person. I needed to know for my team that you were going to be confident, whether you were in the room with someone or you were meeting with them virtually, and that you were going to bring that energy of learning. So blanketed, when I'm looking for people who are going to join our team, it has to be someone who has, charisma is a very lofty word, but just interest in connection, because you want to help someone. If you're in a people facing role or you're trying to get any job, I think almost across the board, you could say it needs to be team-based work. We don't do siloed work anymore. So I want someone who's comfortable building connection, whether that's going to be in the room with someone or passing by someone in the hallway, or you're going to be working with them virtually all the time. I didn't know how often you and I are going to be in the same room. So the fact that you brought energy to video, which is all the more relevant after what happened, in 2020, where all business got sent virtual. So again, you want kind of that connection and the energy. And then the second piece I would say is, it touches on that advice I got from my boss. Admit what you don't bring to the table, but be honest about what you're willing to learn along the way. I don't need someone who thinks that they know it all or have it all figured out, because I don't know it all and don't have it all figured out. That's why we work in a team, in a collaborative environment. I just look for people who are honest about what they can bring and honest about what they're willing to learn along the way.
Yeah. So two things. One, it's so funny that we video interviewed, and then, 3 or 4 months later, everything is video. Well, I'm glad that I've gotten very comfortable on video now. I think the biggest thing that I resonated with there was around like honesty around strengths and weaknesses. I think that people are so quick to say like, oh, I'm good at this, and really like put up the front, which is, it's easy to do in an interview, like just say, oh yeah, I'm good at this, I can do this for you, I can do, but then as soon as I'm in the role, I realize like, oh, well, actually my written communication isn't that good, or whatever it is. But that's something that I think, potentially students struggle with admitting, right? Because we want to feel like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity, I have to be a good fit. And something, people ask me about interview stuff like, oh, hey, I've got an interview coming up. And it's like, yeah, just make sure that not only that you're selling yourself to them, but also that there's really good two-way value, right? Because you don't want to just be selling yourself to the point where you don't even ask if the job's going to be a good fit for you, right? And so I think there's both sides of it. It's like you want to make sure that you put on that confident air that you're looking for, but then also that there's the realization that, hey, maybe is this a good fit for me? I need to make sure that. So all really good things. I love that.
It wasn't too long ago that I was the student sitting in that seat vying for the internship. And although I don't remember all of those calls or internships that I tried to apply for, now that I'm on the role reversal side, it is the confidence in, I know what I'm bringing to you because of what I've done or who I am. But just be like, we'll use you as the example again. you hadn't done majority of what I needed this position to serve as, but you had an honest conversation to me about what you were good at and how you could apply that to learning all that I needed you to learn.
Mm.
And that's that. Be honest about the characteristics, the traits, the experience that you do have, and then show them how excited and open you are to learning. That's not something that you can buy, teach. It's just that you're either honest and intuitive in saying, I want to learn, or you're faking it so much that the person on the other side is going to say, well, they're either going to buy it or they're not.
Yeah. It was interesting because you had asked me, I remember this in our interview, you asked, hey, like, how are you under pressure? You asked me about my stress level. You said, hey, are you someone who, if you're in a high pressure situation, that idea of like, are you just going to run out of the room? So for you, what does that look like? So in those types of stressful situations and moments, any tips for managing that?
So I think we all get a bit flustered when things aren't going the way that we planned. We could have done everything right leading up to the moment. And if you work in technology, you still know that you can do it all right and it's still going to fail. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the world. And so I think, again, coming back to this honesty and transparency factor, you can't lie to the person in front of you or make up a reason why the technology isn't working. They don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
They don't want why things aren't working in that moment. They want you to be the confident person who's going to fix the issue. You might have done everything you can and you're looking bad, even though it was all out of your control. Be the person in the moment who can take the deep breath and say, you're right. This has failed. This isn't going as planned. I'm on it. Don't get over flustered. Don't over promise.
Yeah.
Don't try and be anything other than in the moment. So if I have someone, or if, the moments where it might not be like my direct boss who I'm disappointing, it might be like 8 levels ahead of me. We've got this exec who's on a call and the room failed. They don't want you to walk in there and kind of be frazzled and flustered and saying, well, we did everything right ahead of time. We checked, this should be working. We tested. That's not what they want.
Yeah.
They want you to walk in the room, acknowledge the issue, or walk into the situation, acknowledge the issue and say, we are on it. We're fixing it. Things are going to be going as planned very shortly. If 12 people were disappointed or impacted by the technology, in my case, I need to own that. And I need to circle back with them and say, I absolutely own that this happened. I understand the impact to your business. We fixed it. Give them a very short, brief reason to what happened and say how you're fixing it for the future. Maybe they read that email, maybe they don't, maybe they roll their eyes because they were still frustrated, but you have fully owned the scenario.
And just in general, that was one of my huge takeaways from the internship as a whole, is the power that ownership has, the power that, hey, I am actively working to solve this issue or follow up. I think that, as soon as you start making excuses in any situation, that people immediately are just like, they tune you out and they dismiss you as someone who's just an excuses person, versus owning it, versus fixing it, versus taking those steps. So I love that. One last question I had for you is around kind of the idea of technology specifically, because I think this is something that obviously is your field of expertise. I'm curious about how, when everything shifted to virtual, obviously we picked new tools like Zoom. I know was a new one where we hadn't used it too much, and we really dived into like using Zoom more. As you and the team are picking what tools and what spaces are being filled at different times, is there anything that you look for specifically in terms of like, oh, here is actually how we find a gap and how we find a need, or how we find the tool or pick the tool that can be used to fill that gap? Any thoughts around that?
What I have learned since we decided that there's going to be continual gaps in our new world, because we're not going to all be in the offices. if you take our Raleigh location, for example, we went from a campus of 900 employees. We're never going to have that again. I never say never. It's going to be a long time till we're there again. So we're going to have to fill in all the gaps to replicate being an office full of 900 people to not being that way. So we're going to create this program, and what I've learned through my research and how I'm defining this is that service and support are reactive. Customer success, meaning your engagement and utilization of tools, is proactive. So right now, again, it's all kind of lofty, and I'm still learning a lot. I'm having to teach a lot. I'm having to read a lot. But I would say that if you can be in a mindset of technology that is, when something goes wrong, know how to fix or be reactive, or when there's a gap and things don't go right, you do have to be able to react. But what can you do that's proactive? What kind of questions can you ask yourself? I would love if Zoom did XYZ, but it doesn't. What kind of questions can you ask yourself to go out and find on the internet? Oh, well, there's an application out there that does this. Oh, there's another tool that, Zoom doesn't do it, but WebEx is building this, or Teams is building this. Be really inquisitive, curious, and open-minded about technology solutions, because that's where kind of that proactive comes into, because someone isn't identifying gaps for you. You're curious enough to find them on your own. And something I could think of is, so we're all on Zoom, right? You all are attending school through Zoom. We are working through Zoom. Well, if Zoom doesn't work, if your laptop decides to crash, being reactive means that you're now 15 minutes late because you didn't have a backup option. You didn't know what was going wrong. Being proactive is saying, I'm a technology user. I'm going to use it all day, every day for my work and for my school. Maybe I should have the app on my cell phone. It could be the easiest solution, but as long as you're thinking steps ahead of yourself, it could be a very, very easy solution. It could be something as having backup means.
And there's so many opportunities for things like that to happen now, even as simple as, my Wi-Fi router went down and now I don't have access to the internet on my computer, all these things. So it's definitely a lot of interesting things to think about there, and looking for, hey, what are other people using to solve these solutions that I may not know how to solve? How am I tracking my exercise? How am I managing my schedule? What apps am I using for school? All these little things are places where we can use those tips you shared in terms of being open-minded, in terms of constantly looking for ways to improve. And so I think that's the huge advantage of constantly growing in a technology-based world, right? So Carolyn, I really appreciate the time today. It's been so cool. We got to have so many conversations over the last year, and like having the chance to just kind of condense it down into this great conversation that I can go back to and listen to and learn from down the road is fantastic. So I really appreciate it.
Well, Parker, you were a joy to have. We miss you, but it is exciting all that you take in the world, including this podcast.
For everybody listening, make sure to check out our Instagram at Taking a Breath. And what we'll do is we'll post some highlight clips from this interview there, and we'll be putting out content every week on there as well. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Taking a Breath podcast with Parker Mays.